The Fort Erie Podcast with Brent Jones. Brent Jones starts now.
Hey, that's me. I'm Brent Jones. It's Tuesday, November 28th, and you're listening to episode 76 of the Fort Erie Podcast. Thank you for joining me today, and thank you to everyone who came out to see me on Saturday evening. By the way, I volunteered to man the Salvation Army Christmas kettle at Sobeys from 6 until 8 p.m. Some of you came out, made a donation, which was great. I appreciate that. It felt good to volunteer some time and help out Salvation Army. As you know, dear listeners, regular listeners, I am on a mission to keep this show festive and jolly for the balance of the year. Keep the focus on giving, including today's brand new episode. There were only 3 episodes left of the Fort Erie Podcast for 2023. Less than a month to go until Christmas, if you can believe it. That is wild. I feel like it crept up on us fast this year, but I've got a big announcement. Today's episode coming up, I'm going to be making a donation to the Crystal Ridge Dream Center's annual toy drive event. I'll be donating some toys on behalf of listeners of this show. I'll actually put a call in a little later in today's episode. I'm going to call over to the Crystal Ridge Dream Center, see if we can get somebody on the phone who maybe can tell us a little bit about their toy drive. I believe you have right up until, I think it's December 11th to donate new toys to the Crystal Ridge Dream Center. Also in today's episode, Christian Kentie will be joining me. Many of you may know Christian as the Frugal Dutchman. That's his store in downtown Ridgeway. They sell comic books, collectibles, games, that sort of thing. He'll be joining me to talk all about that. And we have not played Fort Erie trivia on this show in some time. So I'm going to have 2 contestants joining me by phone shortly who are going to compete for supremacy of their Fort Erie knowledge. The winner of today's round of Fort Erie trivia will get a Fort Erie Podcast t-shirt. So all of that is coming up on today's episode and more. Lots of stuff to cover as always. Anyway, I was going to mention that yesterday was Cyber Monday. Now, if you haven't heard that term before, or if you're not familiar, Cyber Monday is a lot like Black Friday. It's like a continuation of Black Friday, but it's set up for discounts for online shopping or in some cases digital-only products. The term Cyber Monday, as far back as I could find it, I believe it was first used back in 2015, so 8 years ago. And I have to be frank, I got to be really honest with you guys. Black Friday, Cyber Monday, neither of these days mean anything to me. I couldn't care less, if I'm being very honest. As far back as I can remember, the U.S. had Black Friday. And of course, if you had the benefit of growing up in a border town like Fort Erie, you may be accustomed to crossing the border on Black Friday to get some great deals, especially with the holidays coming up. But when I was a kid, when I was growing up, Black Friday wasn't a thing in Canada. Not really. We just had Boxing Day. Boxing Day was always Canada's biggest retail day of the year. And then some point in history, our country decided to hop on the bandwagon and say, well, coast to coast in Canada, we're going to have Black Friday too. But in my opinion, Canada never really got very good at it. If I'm just being honest. I mean, I find the Black Friday discounts, they're not very good. Like you hear about people that get like trampled in the US to get some of these crazy deals, especially on consumer electronics before the holidays. But the discounts here, you'll go to like Best Buy and see you can get like 15% off a TV. Not knocking a 15% discount. It's great if you can save some money, but 15% I don't think is worth trampling anybody for. I think the problem with consumer electronics is that they've become so cheap. Like TVs are already relatively cheap. When I was a kid, to buy like a big screen TV was thousands and thousands of dollars. And now anybody can go out and buy a 55-inch smart TV for like $400 or $450 at full price without a discount. So, and the same thing goes with computers, laptops, tablets, phones. Everything is so relatively cheap now to produce and acquire. Oddly enough, you know what's expensive? The stuff we actually need, not consumer electronics, but things like groceries, gas, heating your home, purchasing a vehicle, paying your taxes. That stuff's expensive. If they could come up with a Cyber Monday to help me save money on my family's grocery bill, that would be amazing. So my idea would be like skip Black Friday, skip Cyber Monday. You can even cancel Boxing Day this year. That's fine too. And make all the things that we actually need to live, make those things affordable. Like if it means I have to spend more money to buy a TV, I'm fine with that. As a matter of fact, I'll just keep the TV I've got. I don't need a new TV. What I need is my home heating bill to come in under $100 one of these months. I think that'd be amazing. Or maybe I could find a way to fill up my truck for less than $100. I think that would be great. But these are all wishes that I just don't know if Santa's going to be able to fulfill this year. Anyway, let's have some fun. It's time to play trivia.
Fun and games on the Fort Erie Podcast.
All right, I have 2 contestants live on the phone ready to play some Fort Erie trivia. Let's start with you, Betty. How you doing today?
I'm great, thanks.
How long have you lived in Fort Erie, Betty?
Um, I moved back here in 1998 after being gone for 20 years.
So you've got some experience in the area. You're going to be facing off today against Justin. Justin, how are you, sir?
I'm not too bad. Not too bad.
Good. And how about you, man? You've been here since 1998 or what?
I was born in 91, but I've been in Fort Erie for the last, 14, 15 years now. So.
Okay. Well, we'll see how you guys do. Good luck to both of you. I'm going to walk through the rules and then we'll go ahead and get started. So you're going to take turns today answering trivia questions about Fort Erie. And whenever I say Fort Erie, I'm referring to the entire town, which includes Ridgeway, Crystal Beach, and Stevensville. Nobody can help you answer these questions. No Googling, no cheating, and no taking hours to come up with an answer. You got to think fast. You got to do this on your own. I get the final say on whether your answer is right or wrong. And as a quick hint, virtually the answer to every question I'm going to ask today was contained somewhere within a previous episode of the Fort Erie podcast. Whoever gets to 3 correct answers first after an equal number of turns will be our winner, and the winner gets a Fort Erie podcast t-shirt. Betty, we're going to start with you. Do you understand the rules and are you ready to go?
I understand and I'm ready.
Okay, Betty, first question. What is the maximum number of short-term rental licenses issued by the town in a year?
For the whole town of Fort Erie? Oh, wow. I'm going to say 120.
The answer is 250, I'm afraid. Justin, on to you. Which Ridgeway side road was coincidentally repaved earlier this year after multiple listeners of this podcast complained about its condition on the Byrd Box?
Oh man, I'm pretty sure I know the road. I just can't remember the name.
The correct answer was
Stock, is it?
No, the answer is Burley Road. Betty, back to you. Former Fort Erie resident Shane Lindstrom, who is now a music producer, goes by what stage name?
I have no idea. I've never heard of Shane Lindstrom.
The correct answer is Murda Beats. Justin, back to you. Ridgeway Legion is branch 230. What branch number is the Fort Erie Legion?
175.
It is 71, I'm afraid. Betty, back to you. We got to get you on the board, Betty. One of you here. What business now operates where Pataraks used to be on Dominion Road?
Homefront Landscape.
You got that exactly right. Homefront Landscaping. Betty's on the board with a point. Justin, we're heading over to you. What year did the Peace Bridge open to the public?
Oh, Lord.
1927.
That's exactly right. Yeah, Did you guess?
Good.
I knew a little bit of history about some of the infrastructure in the area, but I wasn't exactly sure, but yeah.
1927 is the correct answer. You are exactly right. So you both got a point.
Nice.
Betty, let's go back to you. How many Fort Erie Public Library branches are there?
3.
That is correct. Betty's got 2 points. Justin, over to you. Since you seem to know your history, in what year did the Crystal Beach Amusement Park close?
1989.
That is correct. You both have 2 points. So, Betty, if you get this next one, Justin will have a chance to catch up. We'll go to sudden death, but let's see how this works out. Betty, your question is, what 2 big national banks will you find on Jarvis Street?
Bank Montreal and Royal Bank.
That is correct. Okay, Betty's got to 3. So, Justin, you have to get this one, or Betty is the winner, okay? Are you ready?
Yeah, no pressure.
No pressure, sir. All right, here you go. What Bridgeburg business is taking over the space on Jarvis Street, formerly occupied by Green Apple Coffee House?
They deal with dry. The frozen. I can't think of the name of it, but.
I'm sorry, Justin. We can't take that for an answer.
Sorry.
I know you knew the place. The correct answer was the Manic Maker is moving up Jarvis Street, and they do make freeze-dried candy. You are correct. But
That's it.
Betty, congratulations. You are the winner for today's round of trivia.
Yay, thank you.
Awesome.
So you hang on, Betty. I'm going to tell you how you can collect your t-shirt. Justin, I want to thank you so much for playing. And for listeners, this will be the last round of Fort Erie Trivia for 2023. If you want to play in an upcoming round, leave a message on the Byrd Box, 289-599-2973.
News on the Fort Erie Podcast.
Here's a brief look at what's making news in our town. Probably the biggest story from last week was the explosion that happened on Wednesday at the Rainbow Bridge in Niagara Falls. This happened after a vehicle traveling upwards of 100 miles per hour hit a median and went airborne like something out of Dukes of Hazzard. All border crossings in Niagara, including the Peace Bridge, were closed out of an abundance of caution. This, of course, happened the day before American Thanksgiving, when border crossings were already much busier than usual. The 2 passengers in the vehicle did unfortunately perish, and one border guard was hospitalized with injuries. At the time I'm recording this, there have been no reports as to what actually caused this accident to happen. Twice at the start of the month, U.S. Customs and Border Protection officers seized high-end vehicles that had been reported stolen in Ontario, one Rolls-Royce and one Land Rover. The vehicles were intercepted in Buffalo after crossing into the U.S. Via the Peace Bridge from Fort Erie. A coach bus struck an awning at the Comfort Inn on Hospitality Drive. There were no injuries reported, but police have asked fire services to check the integrity of the structure that was hit. Back in September, you may have heard Crystal Beach Hockey Academy opened its doors. For those who don't know, Crystal Beach Academy is a local prep hockey academy, opened its doors to 38 local and international student athletes and coaches back on September 4th. Program director Kevin Rawlick was recently quoted in the Fort Erie Observer saying, "Our mission is to provide a world-class hockey training experience that not only elevates players' skills, but also instills values that will benefit them throughout their lives." Videos of Fort Erie Santa Claus Parade back on November 18th have made the rounds on social media, amassing thousands of views, likes, and shares, particularly the Santa Claus float itself, which not only featured a sleigh and Santa Claus and Mrs. Claus, but also 8 human reindeer flying with assistance from hydraulics. Many Fort Erie residents, myself included, are describing this year's Santa Claus Parade as the best in our town in many, many years. Fort Erie native Shane Lindstrom, better known to many as international music producer Murder Beats, returned to Fort Erie on November 17th, returned to Greater Fort Erie Secondary School specifically to chat with students about his career in the music industry and encourage them to follow their own dreams. Lindstrom also made a generous donation of $10,000 to the school's annual toy drive. And also back on November 17th, Green Vibes Floral Garden held their official ribbon cutting and grand opening ceremony at 1218 Garrison Road. That's the former location of Crescent Gardens Florist before it moved to downtown Ridgeway. So congratulations to Green Vibes Floral. And there is one more news story that I want to cover. One more. And I think this story is important enough that I'm going to give it its own segment coming up in today's episode. Coming up in just a moment, another story concerning our regional councillor, Tom Encina. So that's coming up. But first, let's do a good deed for the children.
The Fort Erie Podcast.
Hello?
Hi, is this Gina?
This is.
Gina, it's Brent Jones at the Fort Erie Podcast. How are you?
I'm great, Brent. How are you?
I'm doing just fine. Thank you for taking my call. How long ago was it that you founded the Crystal Ridge Dream Center?
Back in 2019.
Man, you guys are doing a lot of stuff for being only around for 4 years. That's great.
Definitely, with the help of obviously many other people.
Well, and that's it. And that's why I'm calling you today. I'd like you, if you could, to tell listeners of the Fort Erie Podcast about the toy drive, because you are doing, the Crystal Ridge Dream Center is doing their annual toy drive. And what kind of toys are you looking for? How does this work?
So the Crystal Ridge Dream Center is doing their 4th toy drive, and it's our 5th year doing Christmas assistance. And we are looking for toys from 0 all the way to like gifts for 18-year-olds. So we're looking for things like Legos, LOL dolls. We are looking for like shaving kits, shower gel kits for the teenagers, like body wash kits. What else are we looking for? Like mini cologne sets, possibly from Shoppers Drug Mart, trains for the little ones, anything that you would think that a little child would want.
And for someone here in town who wants to make a donation, where and when would they drop some of these things off?
So we have Mondays and Wednesdays from 11 to 1. You can stop by the Dream Center to drop them off. We also have a drop-off location at the Breakfast Beacon located in Crystal Beach. You can drop off toys there Monday to Saturday. They're open, but they're closed on Wednesday. And then also Planks in Crystal Beach has opened their doors to be a toy drive donation place. Mm-hmm. And then also the Red Apple in Crystal Beach, they have put on 4 toy drives for us. So if you want to shop there for Christmas and purchase a toy and just donate it to the Crystal Ridge Dream Center.
Very good, very good. And actually, I've just got your poster pulled up here on social media. It looks like Lasting Impressions is also accepting donations for you?
That is correct.
Okay, cool. Just wanted to make sure we didn't miss any. And folks have until December 11th to donate toys or some toiletries maybe for the older kids. Is that right?
That is correct. And we also have Shaka, the Farm to Beats. They are looking for gift cards from like local restaurants or gas cards just to be donated and dropped off at Shaka.
Okay. Well, I made a little trip to Mastermind Toys this week. I spent a little bit of pocket change here. Got some of the things you mentioned, Legos and some of that. About $200 in total of stuff. You want these things unwrapped, right?
Yes, please. Thank you so much.
Well, you're welcome. I wanted to make sure that, deserving kids in our town, that they get a nice Christmas, and I'm going to be dropping all of that stuff off, all right?
Thank you, Brent. And we are collecting until December 11th if anyone is interested in donating.
Tons of people collecting right now. Why should listeners donate to the Crystal Ridge Dream Center?
We want to ensure that every child in the community does not go without receiving a Christmas present this year.
You're listening to the Fort Erie Podcast.
Since relaunching this show back in May, there have been a whole number of strange coincidences. Things get talked about on the Fort Erie Podcast, and then all of a sudden there seems to be a response within our community. Things start to happen. I'll give you an example. Earlier this year, I asked listeners of this show, I said, what is the worst road in Fort Erie, the road in the worst condition? And of course, we'll be getting to it later today, the Byrd Box segment of every episode. It's the answering machine I have set up for the Fort Erie Podcast. A bunch of you listeners called in, reported that Burley Road was the worst road in the town of Fort Erie, and specifically the stretch between Dominion and Thunder Bay. And I agreed. I said, that road is in awful shape. So back in episode 59, I called and left a message for the town. And by the following week, when episode 60 was released, the town had already got to work digging up and resurfacing Burley Road. And I said at the time, and I maintain now, I can't take credit for that happening. For a job that size, surely the town had already allocated funds for this. They must have had a plan for it. It's not because of the Fort Erie Podcast they decided to fix Burley Road. Just a coincidence. Okay, and then back in episode 73, I'll give you another example. Again, a caller calls into the Byrd Box, leaves a message, and complains that even though Effage had finished their work on the QEW quite some time ago, all their mess was still there. Their signs, their pylons, and then guess what? By the following week, episode 74, Effage had come back to pick up all their stuff. And again, I said at the time, and I maintain now, I can't take credit for that happening, guys. I mean, surely Effage had a plan at some point to come back and pick up their stuff. They weren't going to leave their pylons there forever. But on today's episode, I'm going to take credit for something that happened because of this show. Regular listeners, those of you who listen regularly, back in episode 68, back in September, I reached out to our regional counselor, Tom Encina. I brought a concern to him from a listener of this show. Somebody had called into the Byrd Box and shared their concern about electric scooters operating in live lanes of traffic without wearing a helmet. And I thought Tom maybe could share some insights. And he was great. He replied within a moment, said he'd get answers for this show. But of course, he never actually did. This was back, again, early in September. Now, some of you started asking me about it because a couple of months have passed. Hey, did Tom ever get back to you? So in episode 74, just a couple episodes ago, I shared that I had indeed followed up with Tom. I followed up by email on September 26th. I followed up again by email October 13th. I called and left a voicemail for him on October 26th. I actually shared that voicemail with you back in episode 74. I actually called the guy, left a message, and tried to be very polite in all of these exchanges. I mean, the guy said he'd do something, he'd get answers, he'd look into something for the show. He has not done it. And then he outright ghosted me when I tried following up with him. Not once, not twice, but 3 times. I think it's fair that after 2.5 months, you can say, okay, a person has ghosted me. They're clearly not going to respond. So as it stands, we're into late November. There's still been no word back from Tom on this issue. Again, 2.5 months later, not even a quick line just to say, hey, Brent, I got busy. I'll look at this later. Or hey, Brent, I changed my mind. I don't want to comment on this anymore. Fine. Okay, that would have been okay. But no, there's been nothing, just radio silence. And I was a bit nervous to share this with listeners of the Fort Erie Podcast. I was nervous to critique Tom's behavior. I didn't call him names or anything. I didn't attack his character. That's not my style. I just stuck to the facts. I stuck to the timeline. Hey, here's what happened. But I do know that a number of you who listen to the 40 Erie podcast, you're fans of Tom. And so I thought, gosh, there's probably going to be a few people in this town who aren't going to be, too happy about what I have to say here, that I'm sharing these details about my exchange with Tom. But do you know how many people, after listening to episode 74, do you know how many people came out in defense of Tom? 0. Not one person stuck up for Tom after episode 74. On the other hand, a number of you dear listeners piled on after I shared that update. I shared some of those remarks in episode 75, the previous episode. Some of you called into the Byrd Box. Some of you sent me texts and direct messages on social media. You left comments on my social media posts. Some of you even tagged Tom in those comments. And many of you shared stories with me about how you too have been ghosted by our regional counselor. You've reached out with concerns. You've never heard back. Well, I'm here to tell you today, episode 76. We all just heard back, sort of. Like, did he reply? No. Well, sort of. Not exactly. In a very indirect way. See, I'm holding last week's new edition of the Fort Erie Observer, reading Tom's report from the region, his biweekly column here in the Observer. This is the November 23rd edition, Volume 5, Issue 6, Page 3. He concludes his biweekly column with this. So I'm reading this right out of the paper. Before I sign off, he says, I want to express my apologies to those who have sent me emails and did not get a response. Last week, while updating my regional laptop, which is tied to my phone, I had what I call a dumping of emails in the inbox. There were approximately 2,000 new messages there dating back 2019. This suddenly appeared. I've had issues before, but was assured it was fixed. If you were one of the authors who did not get a response, please send another email to me. I'm almost at a loss for words. Fort Erie, yeah, you heard it here. Okay, this, or in the Observer, I should say. This is about as coincidental as it gets. As folks, listeners of the show, rally around the Fort Erie podcast and say, hey, yeah, me too. I've reached out to Tom, never got an answer. He publishes this. Somehow, we're supposed to believe, as an elected official, our regional counselor, Tom Encina, he was not aware for 4 years that he hadn't received 2,000 separate emails. Think about the last 4 years. We went all through a global health crisis, okay, which resulted in the shuttering of dozens of local businesses, a housing crisis, our hospital losing its overnight hours and the urgent care. Yeah, through all of that, guys, he wasn't receiving our emails, and he apparently didn't notice right up until now, right up until the Fort Erie podcast highlighted his tendency to ghost people who bring him valid concerns. You are going to have a very hard time, Mr. Encina, convincing me that that's a coincidence. And best of all, in this column, I shouldn't say best of all, worst of all, he makes no claim anywhere in this column that he's going to try to reply to these emails. He concludes it again with saying, if you were one of the authors who did not get a response, please send another email to me. That, you got to be joking. He's putting the onus on readers of his column in the Observer to send him another email. That is outrageous. Look, Tom, if you are listening, and I know you are, first off, do the right thing. If your story is true about your email here, and I have my sincere doubts, but if your story is true, reply to each and every one of those 2,000 emails. Nobody's saying you have to do it today. It may take you some time, but do not disrespect people who've taken the time to reach out to you by asking them to resubmit a new email to you for a concern they may have brought to you back in 2019. Second, you most certainly got the concern that I sent to you on behalf of the show back on September 13th. You replied to that email within an hour and said you'd get answers for this show. And matter of fact, you said you were going to respond to the show by calling into the Byrd Box. Failing to do that has nothing to do with whether your email is working or not. Even if you want to claim that you didn't get my follow-up emails because of some unknown email issue you had, you didn't get my email follow-ups on September 26th, you didn't get them on October 13th, you most certainly got the voicemail I left for you on October 26th. Look, there's a saying that goes, never ascribe to malice what can be explained by incompetence. And I think that applies here. I might have got the saying a little bit wrong, but that's essentially the crux of it. The best case scenario here is exactly that, is incompetence. Because otherwise, Tom is essentially telling us here in the Observer, in writing, that he has 2,000 emails approximately from his constituents dating back as far as 4 years, and he feels no responsibility to actually read and respond to those emails, even if they're from the very constituents who elected him in the first place.
Fort Erie Real Estate with Brent Jones, your friendly local realtor with RE/MAX Niagara Realty.
Some of you may already know that the Real Estate Business and Brokers Act is being replaced with TRESA, the Trust in Real Estate Act. Phase 2 of these legislative reforms will be coming into effect on the 1st of December. Now, for the average listener of this podcast, the average Ontario resident, that likely doesn't mean very much that Ontario real estate law is getting an overhaul. But one key change in this legislation, the new legislation, is the removal of the customer service relationship between a buyer or seller and their agent. Now, as a consumer, when you are buying or selling real estate, you will have two choices when engaging with your agent. You can become my client, meaning I can represent you, sort of a traditional client relationship, or you can choose to be a self-represented party. And this comes with a whole list of risks and pitfalls that I will need to review with you. All agents in Ontario will be required to review with buyers and sellers when engaging with them. But for today's real estate feature, it's really that client relationship that I want to focus on, and why, whether it's me or a different agent, somebody else altogether, if you are looking to purchase a home, you should have your own realtor, your own real estate agent representing you. Folks love, I see this all the time. People love to jump on realtor.ca or Point to Homes or whatever, browse homes, and then call the listing agents, reach out to the listing agents and say, hey, I'd like to set up a showing. They go to the listing agents directly, and there were a few reasons for this. There's this long-held belief that the seller will pay a lower commission if only one agent is involved in the transaction, meaning the buyer is thinking, hey, I may be able to get a better purchase price if I work directly with the listing agent because the seller will have to pay less in realtor fees. And in most cases, that is categorically false. The seller will pay the same amount to the listing brokerage, whether there's one agent involved or there's two agents involved. And I think the second reason why so many people love to go to the listing agent is they feel like they're going direct to the source. This person knows more about the property. They have a direct means of communication with the seller. And this second point is especially false, or at the very least, I should say, dangerous, because under the law, the listing agent owes their seller client a fiduciary, meaning the listing agent must act in the best interests of their seller at all times. Now, if you decide after meeting with the listing agent, reviewing the property, you decide you'd like to make an offer on that property, the listing agent will, more likely than not, put you under an agreement, a buyer representation agreement. And now we have a situation that's called multiple representation or dual agency. So the listing agent is now not only representing the seller, but also representing the buyer in this transaction. And under the law, in a multiple representation scenario, that agent is not allowed to give either the buyer or the seller an advantage, cannot give one party an advantage over the other. So for example, let's say you are my buyer client and you want to make an offer on one of my listings. I cannot, for instance, tell you how low I think the seller will go, and I cannot tell the seller how high I think you will come. Do you see the problem here? Listen, I have no opposition to multiple representation. If I can represent both a buyer and a seller on a transaction, that's what's called double ending a deal. In other words, doing both ends of the transaction, both the buyer and the seller end. And in most cases, it will mean double the pay for me. And this is perfectly legal in Ontario, despite the inevitable conflicts of interest that it sometimes creates. So my advice to you, if you're a buyer, if you're thinking about purchasing a home, hire or appoint, whatever word you want to use, get your own designated agent to represent you and your interests alone. Okay, there's a few benefits to working with a buyer agent of your own when you go to purchase a home. First off, this agent will represent you, not the seller. They have no connection to the seller. They owe you that fiduciary duty, meaning your buyer's agent can negotiate harder on your behalf. They're more likely to point out problems with the home. They're likely to advise you to structure your offer a little better with clauses and conditions designed to protect your interests. A buyer agent, as a second point, by the way, doesn't cost you anything. You don't pay anything out of pocket to hire a buyer agent. It is the seller of a property who pays a commission to the listing brokerage, and the listing brokerage pays a portion of that commission to the buyer, the buyer brokerage. So the compensation for both agents comes out of the proceeds of the sale, and the seller pays that. The commission the seller owes is not any greater in most cases just because there's a second agent involved. Usually it's exactly the same. Now, I'll also mention that a good buyer agent working on your behalf can search and preview homes for you. This is especially important if you are, say you're relocating to the town of Fort Erie from elsewhere. I've done this before with out-of-town buyer clients where we jump on video calls. I'll do a walkthrough rather than driving in. I can do a video walkthrough of a property. I can go view a property in person and report back. I've certainly made calls on behalf of buyers, whether it is to the listing agent or it's to the town or for some other reason, get answers and get information. Again, this costs the buyer nothing extra, but it does make the search a lot more efficient. Actually, and speaking of efficiency, if you were to imagine spending an afternoon with your buyer agent viewing 3, 4, 5 homes, you could knock them out one right after the other. That's a lot simpler than trying to coordinate schedules with 3, 4, or 5 different listing agents to go view their listing. And I know in the day and age of House Sigma, everybody thinks that they know everything about real estate. They know all the current prices. They know what everything's sold for. They think they know everything anyway. But a good buyer agent can pull comps and market data, let you know what fair market value for a home actually is. Maybe there's a property that's listed for, $500, but really it's worth about $425. A buyer agent, a good buyer agent, can let you know the sort of the pricing history. If this property was listed at $500, but it was previously $525 and it was previously $550 before that, they can provide you with all of this data, meaning that if the price has been reduced several times, there's a very good chance the price can drop further at the negotiation table. A buyer agent can go through the ownership history of that property. This isn't something that a listing agent can do in a multiple representation situation, by the way. They can't tell you, hey, by the way, my listing is priced at $500,000, but fair market value is $425. It's lower than what my seller client is asking. They can't tell you that because they can't give either party an advantage. Anyway, I could go on and on and on, but the point is this: if you are thinking about buying a home, and it is a buyer's market right now, if you are thinking about purchasing a home, give me a call, give me a text, 905-626-8826, 905-626-8826. Let's talk. Let's see if we connect. Let's see if we can work together. But at the very least, even if it's not me, reach out to an agent you trust. Don't go it alone. Remember, when you are reaching out to a listing agent, it is their job to represent their seller client at that point, not you.
It's Fort Erie's answering machine, the Byrd Box.
Welcome to the Byrd Box. This is Fort Erie's answering machine. You can call in 24 hours a day, squawk about anything you like, and I'll play your messages right here on the Fort Erie podcast. Something you want to respond to on the show, something you saw around town, a thinking thought, something that's on your mind. You can call in for any reason you want. 289-599-2973. Let's start with this. Last week's episode number 75 gave away a gift card to Crafted 1885. A gentleman by the name of Matt was our winner. So Matt won the $25, went and redeemed it, and then he called into the Byrd Box with a review of the meal that he and his wife had at Crafted 1885. Have a listen.
We went to Crafted on Thursday afternoon for a late lunch. Turns out my wife has been there before and was really happy when we pulled into the parking lot.
Nice.
I had the wings with Crafted's hot sauce, and I thought it was very good.
Mm-hmm.
The sauce it's spicy, but it's sweet at the same time. And in case it's too spicy, it's like a beer helped cool it down. My wife had the turkey sub and said it was great. So we enjoyed it very much. Again, thank you very much. And I know that we're going to be back.
Well, you're welcome, sir, and I'm glad you enjoyed it, but really you should probably be thanking Arjun Kalia, the owner of Crafted 1885. He's the one who put up the gift card for listeners. I was in Crafted myself last week. I got the brisket burger, which was excellent. The fries are perfect. My wife got some wings. Got some chicken fingers for my daughter. All the food was excellent. Came out hot. It was fresh. It was tasty. I do highly recommend, if you haven't checked out Crafted 1885 already, you probably should. Be more like Matt. Go back to Crafted 1885, or go for the first time if you've never been. And next up, here's a caller with a real estate question.
Is it any easier or more difficult selling and showing homes in the wintertime. I love the show. I've got the t-shirt, actually. All right, keep up the good work. Bye.
All right. Well, first, let me say thank you very much for buying a Fort Erie Podcast t-shirt. Remember, listeners, you can visit the Fort Erie Podcast merchandise store just by going to theforteriepodcast.com. Click the merch link at the top of the page, and 100% of proceeds from all merchandise sold now through Christmas Day will be donated to strong Fort Erie neighborhoods, so you can support your favorite podcast and, at the same time, also support a great cause. Now, as far as winter goes, selling real estate in the winter, winter showings can suck. I'm not going to lie. As much as you try to feel festive at this time of year, taking a family and traipsing through snowbanks and slush and all the rest of it, it can be messy. And some sellers are jerks or irresponsible at the very least. They know they got a showing, but they don't clear their driveway or their front steps. Now, as a listing agent, when I do have a listing, if a home is vacant, let's say, I recognize that my seller clients are not going to be there to clear the driveway, clear the steps, so I'll go by and do it. If there's been a snowstorm, not in the job description technically, but I'll swing by before showings, make sure the steps are clear, throw down some salt. I'll stop by the home after there's been a showing or a couple of showings, make sure nobody wore their gunky winter boots, through the house. I'll clean the floors if necessary. These are some of the behind the scenes things that the realtors are doing to make sure their showings present as nicely as possible. Now, the showings may not be as much fun at this time of year, but winter can actually be an excellent time to sell your home. I may have talked about this before on the Fort Erie podcast. I'm not sure, but there's a few reasons. There's lots of great excuses at this time of year to boost curb appeal with added decor, Christmas lights, blow up Santas, things like that. The warmth features, I'll call them, like great insulation or having a gas fireplace. Those are features that get overlooked a lot of times in the summer months, but in the winter, buyers certainly notice them and appreciate them. And usually at this time of year, there's fewer homes on the market, meaning, and again, this is not the case every year, but generally speaking, there's fewer homes on the market during the winter month, meaning as a seller, you may sometimes command an advantage that way. There's less competition, sort of working against your listing, excuse me. We were just talking in the real estate feature a moment ago about buyer agents, and I said I'd be happy to be your buyer agent to help you get your search started, but also for sellers, happy to provide you with a free opinion of value, 905-626-8826. Don't forget that a lot of homes do sell at this time of year, so if you're holding off until spring, that's fine, you can do that, but there's no reason why you couldn't also get your home on the market this winter as well. Anyway, it doesn't have to be real estate related. You can call the Byrd Box, as I said, for any topic, whether it's a question, something you just want to get off your chest, give the Byrd Box a call, 289-599-BYRD.
Have something you want to squawk about? Let the whole town know what's on your mind. Call the Byrd Box at 289-599-2973. That's 289-599-BYRD.
Okay, joining me on the phone right now, I'm speaking with Christian Kentie at the Frugal Dutchman. Christian, how you doing?
I'm doing all right, Brent. How are you?
Hey, I'm great, man. Thanks for making time to come on the show. I appreciate that. We were talking for a minute before I hit the record button, and of course, you pointed out that the Frugal Dutchman has been a staple of downtown Ridgeway for 7 years. But for the benefit of people who maybe aren't familiar, what is the Frugal Dutchman?
So, yeah, we've enjoyed being a part of Ridgeway's business district for 7 years now. We are what I like to believe is Niagara's favorite place to buy comic books and trading cards and video games, board games, collectibles. It's a lot of things to fit on a tagline.
It is. Yeah. Well, I find I kind of lump it together under, we'll call it collectibles. When I think about sort of trading card games and some of the board games and comic books and that type of thing, I assume this is an interest you've had a very long time. What's your earliest memory of getting into collectibles?
Yeah, so, I've always been a collector of things, and I see it in my kids, too. They like to hold on to things. They don't like to get rid of stuff. So instead of becoming a hoarder, I decided to become a collector of things instead. But my collecting goes back to, or being interested in dealing in collectibles goes back to 95 when my parents started selling on eBay. And the idea of buying something to sell something was always fascinating. And so I grew up around it. And it was just something my dad did on the side. My mom and dad did on the side, and they still do on the side. He's got a full-time job and things like that. But for me, it just became an opportunity at one point. And so it's never gone away. We started out our journey, my now wife and I, when we were dating, doing our first flea market at Burl Creek in Oro-Medonte. They have a big automotive flea market there, and my father-in-law had invited me to come along with them for this weekend. And so we went out. We spent $40 at garage sales the week before, finding deals and stuff. And we walked away from that weekend with $400 in our pocket, and I started doing the math and went, I think I can make some money doing this.
So that's...
And so I had done it on the side for a while, and back in 2016, it became an opportunity, or an opportunity came across where there was a retail location available. And so instead of renting a storage space to store all the things we were taking to our weekly flea, or to the weekend flea markets we were doing, we decided to open a store. And 7 years later, in a new location, we're what we are now. So our original store was 400 square feet, and now I think we're up to just under 2,000 when you include our game room. A large space of everything nerdy you could possibly be looking for.
Well, I'm glad you used the word nerdy, because you used it first, and I didn't have to that way. And by the way, if we
always talk about nerdy isn't dirty; it's a way of life.
Well, yeah, I wonder sometimes, because, and I'm happy to share a little bit of this, sort of later in our chat, but around the same time, you're talking 1995. I mean, that probably would have been right around the time I was into like Magic the Gathering 4th edition. And it was like one of those things where it was like the nerds, like the reject table, got together to play Magic at lunch. And I'm just wondering, from sort of a social perspective, if this is now more widely accepted. There's more people, catching Pokemons and doing that kind of stuff. Can you speak to that at all?
Yeah, so we do still, Magic is still a really big industry. To me, and there are some who will push up their glasses, and I'm actually me on this. But Magic and Pokemon kind of sit on equal planes of different but similar worlds. So Magic reaches out mostly, the target market is older generation, my age, being older gamers. Whereas Pokemon is designed for children, but still is very attractive to my age of players. It's, my age of players is, we call them Masters Division players, is the largest division in Pokemon, even though it's designed for 10-year-olds. But they're kind of in the same world of things, right? And Pokemon, we've enjoyed being a part of for a very long time. I was a player for a long time, and now I'm a judge, and I travel around for that. And we get to have a wonderful weekly Pokemon League here at the store every Wednesday night. From 6 o'clock to 8 o'clock, we run our Pokemon League, and it's a free thing that we do because we need to in order to run our tournaments and things like that. But it's a great time to be able to come together and just enjoy the games themselves. So whether you're into the trading card game, the video game, or Pokemon Go even is a competitive format this year. You can come out on a Wednesday and just hang out and enjoy Pokemon with each other.
Now, you mentioned that's Wednesday 6 to 8. That's at the game room. Yep. And I wanted to touch on the game room because, Frugal Dutchman has been around for the better part of a decade. The game room opened last year. And I kind of suspect that in part you would have done that sooner, except for all the COVID restrictions in the years before. So maybe explain for listeners, they can picture the comic book store. You come in, you buy collectibles. But what's the game room? Can anybody use it? What sort of activities are going on there during the week?
Yeah, so the game room for us came out of necessity. We used to have gaming tables in our showroom store, and they took up a significant amount of our floor space in here, but they were necessary. We've been running Dungeons and Dragons here for a long time. We've run our Pokemon programs for a long time. In the midst of COVID, the store next to ours, which is physically attached, because we're in the old BC kind of stuff. And so it was broken into two stores, but there's an adjoining door that's always been there. And so the store next to ours, during COVID, went out of business. And we immediately said, well, this is what we've been waiting for, is for the space to become available, right? And we had always talked about it. The space becomes available, we'll grab it because we know what we can do with it. And so we did. We grabbed it right away, and we had to carry it without using it for a year and a half just to be able to have it to do what we wanted with it. Because in the midst of COVID, obviously opening a game room was bit of a suicide run for a business when people aren't allowed to be in the same room together.
Sure.
Saying, we'll come together and play games. That doesn't really work. But as soon as we were available or allowed to have people in there, we opened up again, and we got it set up so we've got, I think, 6 tables in there now. We've got a full snack bar. We're closing in on 400 games right now in our game room, and those are just your standard average tabletop games, and there's something there for everybody. We've got games that are specifically designed for kids and young families, right up to your super intense gamers who like things like Talisman and Dungeons and Dragons and Axis and Allies, and you could sit and play for 12 hours and still be going, and everything in between. It's a great way to spend an afternoon or an evening, and have a lot of fun doing it.
So, Christian, is that something anybody could use? I mean, could anybody come in while the store's open and use the game room, or do they have to come during set times, or how does that work?
So we used to have a bit of a set schedule for the game room. We've actually aligned our game room schedule with our store schedule and vice versa. So we've adjusted both schedules to work together. So our store and our game room are open Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, and Saturday. And on Wednesday and Thursdays, we're open from 10 a.m. till 5 p.m. And again, Wednesday, we have our Pokemon League in the evening, but that's a separate event. And then Fridays and Saturdays, we're open from 10 a.m. till 10 p.m. And we'll be here late into the night. And we've kept the store open for that most of the time as well. The only exception is generally there's a few Friday nights where we'll be running a private Dungeons and Dragons sessions where we'll close off, but we try to post those things on our Instagram and Facebook ahead of time so people can see them.
Well, let's tackle that. What are your social media handles? What's your website? Where can people find you online?
Yeah, so frugaldutchman.com is a great way to find everything you need to know about our store. It's a full online store as well, so I think about 90% of our inventory ends up on our website, and we try to keep it as up to date as possible. Obviously, if there are things that you're looking for in the area of board games, trading cards, anything like that you don't see, our contact information is there, and we can usually try and track it down for you as well. As far as social media goes, if you search the Frugal Dutchman on either Facebook or Instagram, you'll find it pretty quick. It's a bit of an unusual name, which is why we liked it.
What is the story behind the name, by the way?
The story behind the name. My mother came up with that name, actually. So when we first opened, we had a list of about 5 to 10 names for the store, and they weren't bad, but they just weren't hitting that creative vibe that we were looking for. Nothing about it seemed marketable or unique or anything, and they were all kind of boilerplate. And so I did what I always do. I went to my family. I sent out a text message to everybody in my family that I would normally do that with, my mother, my brothers, my cousins, whatever. And I said, I just need some ideas, and I might not use the exact ideas, but I need something to spark some imagination for me. And so people started bouncing ideas off me. And my mom sends me one with a little LOL after and says, you should call it the Frugal Dutchman, ha ha ha. Now the story behind that ends up being that, I come from a Dutch heritage. My grandparents came here in the 50s and settled in Ridgeway. And so being Dutch is something I grew up with. And so when she made the joke, the name was so much better than anything we had come up with. And I went, that's absolutely the name. And we registered it right away and went with it. And later I found out that as much as she said it as a joke, she was actually really hoping I'd take it. She just didn't.
Well, that's great. Your family's so supportive. And I wanted to kind of, I hate to use the phrase circle back because it sounds so corporate, but I did want to just get your thoughts on, the game room, the success of the game room, because I see some of the photos that are posted online of, people getting together for Pokemon on Wednesdays and that type of thing. But do you think there was a real need for that following COVID? Because I've also been on your website, and I mean, your website's very robust. I could virtually do all my shopping at your store right from on your website without really having to go in person to browse. But do you think there's a real desire amongst the gaming and collectible communities right now to actually get together with people face to face and in person?
Well, I think one of the things that we learned during COVID, I mean, everybody's a little bit different, but one of the things we learned, especially during COVID, and I say that for me personally, not even just as a store, is the value of spending time with people in person. You don't really realize that you miss that, and I'm an introverted person. I value my sanity of alone time. But I did miss in those years being able to spend time at a game table with my friends. And even in running our Dungeons and Dragons sessions, we had to do that online. And it became an entirely different experience at that point. And we were in such a rush to get back to the table, the physical table. I think even people who would tell you that, well, I like spending time alone, will still be able to give you some pretty real examples of valuing time spent with people that they enjoy spending time with, more than just the obligation of being around people. And I get that. We have staff nights here every Monday night where my staff get together behind locked doors here because we have to know the games. And so we have a couple of Dungeons and Dragons sessions we run during those times, certain weeks. And other weeks, like last night, we had a FanCon meeting, and then we had a board meeting, and then we had game night. And we just played games together and enjoyed some time in, being social and enjoying time spent in the same room at the same table, telling jokes, making fun of each other and playing games. And especially through lockdown, games became a different form of speech for people. They were on the uptick, and we learned that there were different needs involved in games than, in board games than we had access to. And so you saw a bunch of 2-player games starting to come out because, well, all of a sudden we can't play with 7 or 5. We can only play with the 2 of us. But there's not a lot of games tailored to that at that time. And so you see versions of games coming out that were built for 2 players. But coming out of COVID, having a place to go to spend time is a super important thing, because sometimes you just need to get out of the house too. As much as somebody's got games at home, we like to believe our collection is bigger. I hope our collection is bigger. And, you can come and check out a game that maybe you've thought about buying or you've thought about having. We are looking at, in the new year, getting some casual game nights together where people can just drop by on their own or with a friend and join in a table with other people. At the moment, you bring your own group and you spend time together. Not that we're against people table hopping, but, everybody's a little bit different about that. Mm-hmm. On the 25th, we've got Casual Catan Night coming up, which is really cool. So that'll be kind of our first foray into casual gaming, where you pay your $5 table fee and you come, and we're going to have all the Catan boards set up. You can jump on a table with whoever's here and enjoy some time together.
Well, as far as this, I think there's something to enjoying the time together, and then there's something also about finding people with common interests. Because I mentioned as a kid, I enjoyed playing Magic the Gathering, but now I think as a grown up, I'm 38 now. I think about, the last time I played was against 10-year-olds. For somebody like me who maybe wants to dust off some of these collectibles, some of these cards, some of these things, and maybe get back into it, it can almost seem, I don't know, intimidating maybe, where it's like, people who are really into it who what would you recommend for something like that? I mean, is that where you see, going into the new year, you're going to have more tables kind of set up for people maybe like me who would say, I'd be open to giving this a shot again?
Yeah, for sure. So Magic the Gathering is a great point. We are, I won't say anything officially, but we are working on our Magic program here. Pokemon came out for me first, so I was a Pokemon player growing up, so that's where my ability lied. So we focused on that. But Magic the Gathering is a great game as well, and we realize there's a community in Fort Erie that's looking for a place to play. So there are some things coming in the new year for Magic the Gathering, and I'll drop the words Friday Night Magic in there just to kind of tease it. You'll see some more official things as we get a bit of our scheduling ideas figured out and what that'll look like. But yeah, it's definitely something we're aware of. We know people are going to want, or people do want. And even if you haven't played in a while, one of the key things for us here at the Dutchman is that gaming is accessible. Dungeons and Dragons is a great example of an intimidating game to a lot of people. And I hear that from players who used to play or players who have never played. They're nervous about joining a table because they're like, but what if I'm not good enough at it? Or what if I get put at a table with experienced players? And one of the things that we've encouraged all of our experienced players, and most of our tables work out to be, is taking people who are experienced at any game and putting them at a table or in a situation where they can share their knowledge and their passion about something that they enjoy doing as a hobby or something in their spare time. But they enjoy it so much that there's passion there behind it, that they just want to share it with people. And that we're very open to new players here. We want new players to exist, because being a new player is the first step to being an experienced player.
For sure.
And that's the thing that keeps these games going, and that makes it so that we can offer the best experiences possible here. So we love mixing new players with, older players, and if you've been out of the game, coming back to it and dusting it off, there's a lot of acceptance. We've got some, I don't have a lot of rules, for our programs, but number one is, to put it in a nicer way, don't be a jerk.
Yep.
And don't make me make a rule. Right? So if you treat people, those are the only two rules I've ever needed, by the way.
Yeah. We think collectibles, collectible card games, board games, comic books, graphic novels, all types. Do you have any specials or promos coming up for the holidays that you want to share with listeners?
Well, December is always our funnest month of the year here, because the holidays are great. People love shopping, and coming into our store, you're definitely going to find something you won't necessarily find anywhere else. We've got a lot of unique going on in here as far as collectibles go. Mm-hmm. We get to enjoy our biggest sale of the year here every holiday season. We do something every holiday season called the Roll Your Discount Sale. It's our biggest sale of the year. You can save up to 40% on everything in the store, or anything in the store. And you get to roll your discount. So when you come up to the checkout and you're ready to check out, we give you a pair of 20-sided dice.
Okay.
And you get to roll. Whatever comes up on those dice is the percentage off we're going to take off of your entire order. And we're not too stingy about it. If you're like, ooh, I saved 35%. Maybe I'll get some more. Go shop. We're not going to make you roll again. We came up with that a few years ago, and it was so much fun we had to do it twice. I had somebody asking in June about it. I said, no, that only happens in December. So you'll see signs up about it in the store window. We'll have it up online.
I love the story, Christian. I love going from, picking up some collectibles, reselling them. You guys were like the original Gary Vaynerchuk's, out there hawking baseball cards and all the rest of it and turning it into a business now today. Is there anything else you want to share with listeners before we wrap up?
We're excited to see you. If you happen to stop by and you heard us on the podcast, let us know. We'd love to hear what you think about what we're doing. And if you're bored and looking for more podcasts to listen to, you can listen to At the Counter every Thursday. There's new episodes of that out. So.
That's your podcast, At the Counter?
That's our podcast where we talk about everything nerdy that we can possibly, they're conversations we were having, my friend Marcus and I were having at the counter of our comic book store here. If you've ever been to a comic book store, you hear these conversations. And we just decided to put mics in front of us at one point and said, well, let's give this a shot. And so 2 years later, we're still going.
Fort Erie Questions and Answers, based on the Facebook group by the same name.
This is Fort Erie Questions and Answers. It's the part of the show where I go through the Facebook group by the same name and pick out any questions and answers that I thought were especially helpful or interesting. Like this first one from Melissa, who asks, who does dump runs and junk removal? The name that came up most often in the comments, probably no big surprise to anybody who's a part of this Facebook group, is Andy Haywood. His name comes up a lot for this sort of thing: dump runs, junk removal, scrap metal. You can reach out to Andy on Facebook, and I'm sure he can help you out. Then Rochelle says, we are on the hunt for a new chiropractor, looking for one that works with laser therapy, has experience with compressed discs, and how do you pronounce that? Sciatica issues. Open to suggestions, want to stay in the area. There were a few different suggestions in the comments. For example, Windrose Health Center, as well as somebody named Dina at Active Care Physio. But the response I saw come up more than any other was somebody named Daryl at Bridgepoint Chiropractic. Maureen says, I know there was a post on here about donating clothes to the church on Garrison. I can't remember what day you can donate and if they take teenage girls sizes 2 and 4. The comment section on this one was a mess. You think for a pretty straightforward question, it would have been a simple answer, but no, the comments were a mess. For starters, somebody named Jacqueline replied and said, yes. I mean... What a stupid answer. She asked a question. What day do they take the donations, but also what day? Jacqueline replies, yes. Very helpful. Thanks, Jacqueline. Zane replies, I swear to God, this is all he says in the reply. Zane replies, Casa El Norte, 281 Central. Now, if you don't know, Casa El Norte is our local homeless shelter. And yes, they do take donations, but, Sandy, a user named Sandy, replies to Zane in the comments here and says, Casa El Norte is not a church on Garrison Road. Zane replies again, it's a shelter, another option if you want to donate. True, but then Sandy replies again, but that wasn't the question asked. Which again, yeah, Sandy, you are absolutely right. Only one person came to the rescue here in the comments and actually gave the correct answer. His name was Jeff, and he confirmed, yes, Garrison Road Church takes teen clothes and donations can be dropped off Saturday mornings between 9:30 and 11:30 a.m. That... Long road to get to that answer. Tamara asks, where's the best place to order a fresh turkey for Christmas? The two most obvious answers are our butchers here in town, Tender Cuts at the Fort Erie end or your farm gate in Ridgeway. And then Kayla says, looking for recommendations on a good travel agent. Thanks. There were a few different ones that came up in the comments, but the ones I saw come up most often were Mary at Glennie Travel here in Fort Erie or Tara at TravelWise in Stevensville. Both those names came up a lot. But of course, one of the comments here, very predictable, a user named Mike responded and said, do it yourself. It's cheaper, I find. Wow, Mike, thank you for contributing to the conversation. Yes, what most of us understand that maybe you don't is that cheaper isn't always better. She didn't ask what's the cheapest way to travel. She asked for a good travel agent. If you don't have something useful to contribute to the conversation, why bother leaving a comment at all? Look, most of us travel, I don't know, my estimation, maybe once, twice a year if you're busy with career, family. Once, twice a year if you're lucky, whether that's for culture or climate is totally up to you. And look, maybe when you're booking your family's vacation, you like to gamble on just whatever the cheapest option is on Expedia or whatever website online. That's fine. I've booked travel that way before too. But some people would still feel more comfortable talking to a professional, somebody that knows what they're talking about. Just for example, like my mother-in-law is a travel agent, and a lot of her business comes from group bookings. Like if your entire church, for instance, your church group is booking a trip somewhere and you got to book for like 40 people, do you want to take that under your wing to do it yourself? Or for a group that size, would you rather have somebody who knows what they're doing actually book the trip? Or for example, even setting up excursions. My mother-in-law took a group recently to Dubai for an entire week, and there were like daily excursions, things to do. She had a whole itinerary set out for them. All they basically had to do was pay one price, get on a bus to the airport, and she handled everything from there. The meals, the outings, everything. And she was able to advise her group on things like local customs. I mean, do you think you're going to get all that with a Groupon? Like, get real, Mike. Some people want to use a travel agent, and that's fine. There's nothing wrong with that. Anyway, keep the questions coming, Fort Erie. I always find them entertaining.
TheFortEriePodcast.com.
And that's our show for today. Be sure to stop by and see Christian Kentie at the Frugal Dutchman in Ridgeway. You can grab some games and collectibles and that kind of thing. Great Christmas presents for sure. You can also buy yourself something from the Fort Erie Podcast merchandise store. Just a reminder, you can access the merch store for this show at merch.theforteriepodcast.com, and 100% of the proceeds from all merch sold right up until Christmas Day will be donated to strong Fort Erie neighborhoods. If you can spare a new unwrapped toy, please consider donating it to the Crystal Ridge Dream Center's annual toy drive. I know I said earlier I grabbed like $200 of toys from Mastermind Toys to donate on behalf of the show, and I did do that. It's true, but your donation could be as big or small as you want. I mean, don't feel like any donation is too small, too big. I mean, drop off all your donations at the Crystal Ridge Dream Center or Breakfast Beacon, Planks Canada, Lasting Impressions, whole bunch of different spots. Again, thanks to Gina Sloggett for taking my call over at the Dream Center. She wanted me to make sure to to advise listeners that if you purchase toys for the Dream Center's toy drive, if your receipt comes to like $20 or more, you can actually submit your receipt to the Dream Center for a tax receipt. And I didn't mention this earlier in the episode, but hey, this Saturday, December 2nd, 2 to 5:30 p.m., make sure you head down to the Fort Erie racetrack for Santa Claus and fireworks. I'll be there. If you see me, say hi. Should be fun for the whole family. Be sure to subscribe to the Fort Erie podcast on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. There are just 2 festive, jolly episodes left for 2023. Do not rely on your memory to stream it from my website or wait to see it pop up on Facebook. Make sure you subscribe to the show somewhere using a free app like Apple Podcasts or Spotify that will just notify you when new episodes are released. Get your messages in on the Byrd Box, as always, 289-599-2973, especially if you want to play a round of Fort Erie trivia in 2024. You just have to leave a message saying you want to play. It's really that simple. You'll have a chance to prove the supremacy of your Fort Erie knowledge, have a chance to win a prize. But of course, as you know, listeners, you can leave a message on any topic you want. It's totally up to you. And just lastly, I'll mention that my guest next week will be Ashley Coons, owner and operator of LXN Beauty Studio on Jarvis Street. I am trying to line up a second guest for next week, but I have no promises right now. You'll have to tune in and find out. Of course, next Tuesday, episode 77, will continue with the theme of giving. I have more to give away on behalf of the show. Different local nonprofit is going to benefit next week. You'll have to tune in to find out. I think that'll just about do it for today. Bye.
You've been listening to the Fort Erie Podcast with your host, Brent Jones. Never miss an episode. Subscribe on Apple Podcasts or Spotify, or visit theforteriepodcast.com.